Thank you very much for joining us from online, though. I've asked every panels, in fact, because of their specialties, I've asked a particular question to one of each. So, Mrs. Sanjaya, may we hear first about overall, UN level and global level global cooperation and knowledge sharing and skill training, in particular in terms of DRR and CCA. It's from your work doing. And instead of going one go, can we ask every speakers to start maybe 4 to 5 minutes overall, starting from what your experiences are, from what you're doing, and then hopefully we could go to second round, and if that's possible. Thank you. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you all participants for joining this session. For us, I represent the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, and specifically the Global Education and Training Institute, where we train about 1,000 civil servants from around the world. And the training is focused on how to reduce disaster and climate risks and how to implement adaptation projects. And as you know, I mean, it's already mentioned in the concept also, we are facing an increasing frequency and intensity of weather-related events around the world because of climate change. This is impacting both national governments and local governments, and also, of course, communities and the private sector. It is impacting jobs, economic development, and so on. At the same time, governments around the world are facing very limited fiscal space. COVID has reduced tax revenues. There is an estimate from the World Bank that for local governments, the tax revenues have come down by about 25%. And just at that time, when these revenues are most needed to tackle all these climate and disaster risks, and to build the capacities of not only of the governments, but also of the communities and of the private sector to handle this kind of emergencies. So apart from that, what we are seeing around the world is also this. There is a situation of food security. Food prices are going up. There is inflation. There is a shortage of production. Supply chains are disrupted. So this is bringing about economic, social, and environmental upheaval. And this is exactly what should be addressed by a practice policy research link. And that is the topic of this session today. And it is very, very important. And what we have seen is, we have also studied why certain governments are able to manage their, or rather manage the response to the challenges in a better way. And one of the factors is whether or not they are taking a multi-stakeholder approach, whether they are engaging with different segments of society, especially the scientists, the research organizations, the universities, because these are institutes which can help to bring practical solutions to the challenges faced by the national and local governments. So there is a very good opportunity here, but also a challenge. And I think today's discussion is very timely, because we really need to look collectively at how we can forge this practice, policy, and research link better. The universities and the research organizations and a number of private sector organizations, they provide potential solutions to governments for the challenges that they are facing. They have the data, they have the expertise, they have the skills, they have the technical knowledge. But often we see that these partnerships are not forged between government and these institutions. And as a result, what is happening in research is not translating to policy, and what is happening in practice, the challenges of practice are not reaching the research institutions. So again, we need to have a better partnership, a better network between the governments and these kind of institutions, so that we can find workable solutions. There are some good examples around the world. There are science and technology advisory groups at the global level, but also at the regional level, which bring together universities, scientists, research organizations, and governments, both national and local. There are various networks, for example, like the Making Cities Resilient network, which brings together cities and research organizations and universities. But this is a drop in the ocean. We need more of this. We need a more concerted effort, and we need all stakeholders to chip in to understand the need and to forge these relationships. One of the barriers that I can think of is trust. And again, this is one issue which we need to bridge. The trust between the governments and the universities and the research organizations, trust between governments and the private sector, and vice versa. Because the universities can provide the workable solutions for the governments, but the governments need to share their challenges, their problems, and sometimes their data. So these are not problems or challenges or barriers which cannot be surmounted. They can. There are very good examples around the world of how this has happened in the past. But if we are serious about denting or challenging climate change, we really need to pick up the pace and forge these partnerships, these networks, much better than in the past. So I'll leave it at that right now, and then hopefully in the second round add a few more recommendations. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sanjaya. That has been a wonderful start, and especially the focus of the stakeholders and partnership and trust building among different stakeholders from between the government and the researchers group in particular, as well as the practitioners. I think that leads to very nicely to the Emma's point. I think Emma has Emma, are you there? Emma has several hats. I think your example of coastal cities in the Asia Pacific, but especially in the Philippines, you are doing like coastal cities at risk in the Philippines as a principal investigator. But the first part of my question to you, in fact, you please share the experiences of yours doing this project and research project from the developing context perspective. Thank you
very much, Professor Yun. Thank you for inviting me here. That was an interesting meeting we had in Sydney, in Melbourne. So good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me here. Let me share with you what we've been doing in the Philippines. And I would like to share with you what, for example, I say, we try to bridge science, policy, practice nexus for climate and disaster resilience in coastal cities at risk. You can see our resilience toolkit here. You have our QR code. You can check our websites, the resilience toolkit and the coastal cities at risk PM for other things. But really, we locate our initiative in the sense that the IPCC report really calls for a very important issue and challenges of our time, that we are in a twin crisis of our time. The increasing poverty levels, widening inequality, and creating new vulnerabilities. And really, it has exacerbated the effects of the COVID pandemic and intensifying vulnerability already those in already marginal and disadvantaged communities. In the Philippines, we are visited by about 20 typhoons every year. And you can see here the 22 vulnerable provinces. And the Philippines also is sinking 3 times faster than the global average. So you can see here in our sea level rise that 64 out of 81 provinces, covering about 703 out of 100,610 municipalities, inundating almost 700 million acres. So in coastal cities at risk, we believe that we have to institutionalize the resilience agenda through transitory action research, tools, partnerships, networks, and coalitions. I'm very glad that Dr. Bacha mentioned that trust, partnership, and collaboration really involve trust networks and collegiality and all that stuff. So in coastal cities at risk, we employ the vertical, horizontal, and intersectional strategies to strengthen the nest resilience at the local level, national, regional, and the global. So you can see here our partners and our local government partners and private sector partners in terms of how we try to promote climate and disaster resilience in our LGUs through basically by establishing the consortium of resilient cities. And we try to link climate science to policy and practice through transdisciplinary action research by linking science to policy and to practice. So in the science, you have to do the risk profiling, the contextualization of vulnerability, and really to link it to the practice of actions of to prepare, adapt, and transform, to resilience scorecards and city resilience plans and learning, and then we link it to implementing the national and local policies on climate and disaster resilience. We really believe that the new conditions demand that we should be transdisciplinary in our approach. We subscribe to the 3 principles of, we believe that for science to be consumable, actionable, you must co-generate the knowledge with stakeholders. If you do that, you co-create the capacities of scientists, professionals, and practitioners. And if you do those 2 things, it would lead to co-ownership and co-benefits. And therefore, we believe that to move climate science to action, I believe that we must subscribe, 1, to the Pareto principle. I always tell the mayors and governors that 20% input, 80% result. But it seems to me right now the practice is the other way around. 80% input and we only get 20% output. And there is power in numbers. We believe that we have to work together at all levels and in order to really link science to policy and practice nexus. I believe also that, as I always tell the scientists and practitioners working with me, that you have to innovate is to collaborate. But to collaborate is to navigate the intra and inter system of navigation at different levels. So I will stop there, and I will, later on in the concluding statement, I will tell you really what will happen, or at least what we should be doing in terms of partnerships, coalitions for resilience. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you so much. I really like it. Your 3 C's, or co-generation of knowledge, co-creation of capacities, and co-ownership and co-benefits among partner institutions and communities. And in fact, that's really her research. It shows like how the partnership and cooperation could be made in a wonderful way. But I'm sure like there will be more to talk about it. And we are now inviting Kyung-shin, actually, from Korean context. We wanted to hear like more, although like Emma already talked about how to strengthen the partnership, I was hoping to be able to hear from Emma if you want to come back like later about the challenges as well, what we expect from the developing context. Whereas we have Kyung-shin, who will be speaking about Korean CSO roles, and I understand like in this room we may have some Korean practitioners who would like to take some lessons from that. And she will be talking about Korean CSO's role and in CCA, in particular climate change adaptation and DRL project. Faye or Kyung-shin?
Okay, thank you very much. As you introduced, my name is in Korean 이경신입니다, and then my English name is Faye. So I'm working for Korean NGO Council for Overseas Development Cooperation, which is 140 NGOs member of my organization. So KCOC itself represents the voice of the Korean NGOs working in humanitarian aid overseas and also development cooperation. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to speak out for the Korean NGOs. So in my discussion, I'll be talking mostly on, the Korean CSO's DRR and CCA project over in ODA, and also I will draw some key lessons from the practices of what Korean NGOs have been doing in terms of their DRR project. So we had key, critical lessons in implementing this DRR, community-based DRR project. And then from these lessons, I was thinking maybe which way we should go as CSOs, and what roles can you take as the CSOs in terms of the localization and locally led responses. So the overall, the Korean government, I will start with the statistics. The South Korean government, the ODA implementing agency is KOICA, and then according to the data that KOICA has submitted to OECD in terms of the data. So in 2021, there were total 2,383 projects. And then among these over 2,000 projects that were implemented by Korean actors, the climate change adaptation and mitigation and disaster risk reduction initiatives that constitutes about 15% of the total, equating to 375 projects. So out of these 375 CCA DRR projects in 2021, over 70% were conducted by KOICA directly, and also only 7% of those projects, which constitute 29 cases, were implemented by CSOs. And also about 13% of the projects were done by international organizations, including those UN agencies and others. So compared to the number of those projects done by many actors, the CSO actors, still we do not the number of the projects are really increasing compared to the 10 years ago, but then still there is a lack of, still very limited number of CSOs playing this, implemented those DRR and CCA project. Normally, these CSOs in this DRR project used to be done by the CSOs that is under the project scheme, like humanitarian side. So those DRR projects implemented by those NGOs are mainly under the humanitarian side, and those CCA and CCM projects done by those NGOs are normally under the development cooperation sector. So DRR was more gaining more attention in the humanitarian side, and then CCA become more mainstreamed in the development programs. But still, so these days, those NGOs do not talk more about the DRR. That DRR concept is being more integrated, mainstream into the overall development cooperation programs. So, but then we say the climate crisis itself is really blurring the line between the humanitarian and development cooperation, and also it erased the boundaries, traditional distinctions from the developed country, and also the climate change, the vulnerable to climate change countries. So previously, when we do the DRR project, those NGOs who are doing the community-based DRR, that's the community-based DRR project, and then they the programs that they have been implementing was DRR standalone project under the humanitarian scheme. But then what they have faced challenges in terms of the implementing DRR programs was the DRR is not easily like prioritized even in the community. So those communities with the economical and then environmental, social vulnerabilities, they want to do more on their other urgent priority issues like livelihoods and education. So when those NGOs wanted to do community-based DRR, then they were actually face some challenges. Okay, DRR is important, but then we have other priorities. So DRR standalone project itself was not highly welcomed in those contexts. So our CSO members, they had that impression that, okay, DRR standalone project itself is very important, but then that mainstreamed into the development cooperation and climate change adaptation is more important. That has direct affect influence over the life of the local communities. Okay.
Thank you. I just gave you 1 or 2 minutes more because she is on the stage as a benefit. But as she started with a statistic, I had to look up, and what she was referring of the CSO implemented CCA or CDA or DRI initiatives, but just to give you an overview, for the last year's Korean ODA in overall, that the absolute term is $2.8 billion a year. It's about over 4 trillion won, 4조 원 넘습니다. Okay, this is a world's 16th largest, although like in terms of like absolute term, as well as the GNA per GNA, it's only 0.17%, so which is quite small, but rapidly increasing. Korea, as it is now known as an emerging donor, with, for example, from 2020 to 21, we had an increase by over about 27% point or something. So that's rapidly increasing, although we have to admit that last year it has been decreased a little bit because of the fluctuating exchange rate. But what she faced, talking about the size, were among those Korean ODA, in fact, the aid given for the CCA or BRL project is very, very small. And among those, again, the proportion of that has been implemented by the Korean NGOs or CSO as implementers are even smaller. That's what we are talking here. But I wonder like who else are doing the real jobs on the ground. But personally, I think actually 100% of every development project or aid should now go for CCA or DRR. It means that, it doesn't mean that I'm actually advocating or I'm arguing that every other development project should be going down in other sectors, but every development project has to have some kind of component to help the recipient's size to be ready for the increasing disasters and being adaptable to the climate change. That's what I believe. Okay, just a quick note. But last but not least, we have a fourth panelist, Bapon. Thank you for waiting. Bapon is working at Green Climate Fund, so we'd like to hear more about how to raise the fund and what you do, because Green Climate Fund is quite, now it's increasingly important. Bapon, we understand that Bapon has recently joining the GCF, but I'm sure that you will be able to speak out for your institution, right? Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Yoon, for inviting us, and it's been a pleasure to be with you together this evening. So obviously, as we actually heard from our previous speakers, that the system is actually quite complex, and also with this, cascading and compounding effect due to climate change, we actually see quite severity on our disaster-related activities. Even Korea has been flooded actually recently. You saw with the flooding, severe extreme weather. So how we actually catalyze or mobilize actually finance is actually one of the biggest issue, because these are all actually climate change problem, and then how we able to enhance the finance to resolve or support our community more robust, more resilience, or climate-proof infrastructure, as well as support that actually the community need to adapt such kind of changes those are happening in the world. I'd like to maybe step back one more step back before I jump into the finance. That obviously the policy and institutional arrangement is quite important here. And even if we look at actually the climate change and disaster community, sometimes we are actually a little bit silos. And then bringing into one more area, which is like a climate financing, which is not often actually the climate people or the disaster people actually manage. In some country, the finance has been managed by the Minister of Finance or the NDA, which is like a national determinant authority. So for the climate change, it's actually all the policy is actually binded or guided by NDA and as well as NAP, which is called like a National Adaptation Plan. Whereas in the DRR fields, it's basically the disaster plan. Also, there is a global framework like Sendai is there for the climate. There is the Paris Agreement is there. But how actually they collide and collaborate together to understand each other is actually still a challenge, and also it's a very dynamic situation. So how we actually adopt such kind of dynamic adaptation pathway is quite important, and that requires a lot of capacity building, as Sanjay mentioned in his speech, as well as changing of behavior, because which was not actually a disaster prone in the past, we may actually face that area is under threat or under new event are happening. So how we actually adopt and understand and actually try to have those kind of risk perception is quite important. Having saying so, in that perspective, GCF has been established by the Paris Agreement, which is one of the largest climate financing, and it is quite unique in a sense because it has a lot of catalytic instrument to support to the country, why actually we are saying it's a catalytic. So we not only just provide the finance for the project, but we also provide finance for building the capacity of the national government. So for an instance, every developing country, they have access to our readiness financing, which is basically to their capacity building kind of things. It's not only for the NDA's capacity building, which is like a national determinant authority, but also other sectors to better understand the climate change, climate variability, and what are the risks actually this kind of future event will be bring to them. And they can access up to $1 million per year to building their capacity so that they are quite ready to access large financing. And then we also generate project together with the engagement, as also our previous speaker mentioned, that partnership engagement, those are actually quite important. And we also believe on those kind of modality. And that's why we actually set up those kind of co-creation and people-centered or community-led initiatives, how actually we can support those climate change adaptation as well as mitigation project. And in that sense, we designed, we call like our regular project is like up to minimum is 25 million, up to 100 million or $1 billion actually. It goes depending on the country's need. Also, other than that, we also provide developing the National Adaptation Plan, which is actually country can access up to $3 million to develop their National Adaptation Plan. And our belief is that the NAP engage all the stakeholders to understanding their needs and prioritization of those risks within the country so that they could able to support that into short range, medium range, and long range kind of adaptation practices. And also, if you look at our new strategy that has been recently adopted by the board in July 2023, we try to channel most of our money through the countries, so which is we call like a direct access entity. We like to see actually country able to access the financing through partnership and able to actually enhance their capacity for climate change adaptation in this space. And as well as one of the low-hanging fruit in this space is actually early warning system, because you cannot actually change your infrastructure overnight. It requires some time. And in that phase, we will be actually able to support the goal that Secretary General of United Nations actually set up for early warning for all initiatives. So we'll be supporting more than 50 countries, how they can actually support the early warning for all. I think that's all from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bapun. It is very wonderful to hear that GCF has not only set aside like a budget for helping like countries to set up like their national adaptation plan, but also for to finance the capacity building of the relative relevant stakeholders. That's great to hear. Thank you all. May we, in fact, I'm going to ask back again, but actually both Sanjaya and Bapun have addressed the capacity building, but as a second round, and we are already running out of time, so can I ask each speakers to limit yourself like just 2 minutes key lessons to take away from this room, and I'm sure like you have all like key points as your recommendations, what we could do to improve the networking, partnership, and everything that's in 2 minutes. Thank you. Shall we go back to Sanjaya, please?
So so I think in the closing, I think what is required firstly is governments and other stakeholders to understand that embedding risk reduction at the core of development planning is what is required. Of course, development planning is a task done by the government, but it is not done in isolation with other stakeholders like communities, like scientists, like the private sector, and universities and research organizations. So they all have to pool in, they all have to chip in to make sure that the risk reduction, both for disasters and climate risks, are covered in the development planning. And that is how we will achieve the SDGs. Secondly, we need to see what role training can play, because training and capacity building, as I mentioned earlier, also is very important, both for the public administration, but also for the community and also for the private sector. All have a role to play. So everyone needs to be aware. They need to know what to do, and then need to have access to the tools that they can use. So education, training, is very important. Also, it's a pathway to finance, because once you know what you need to do, you know how to diagnose, you know how to develop projects, and that's how you can access finance. And the last point I'd like to say is we all need to promote these partnerships and networks to ensure more multi-stakeholder engagements. So that it's not the governments alone trying to tackle these challenges, or it's not the community alone trying to do this. It's all working together, including private sector, universities, and scientists. Over.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Emma, can we go back to you?
Okay. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the inputs of Bapun and Dr. Bacha, because these are really the things that we're trying to do in terms of, partnerships, collaboration. Let me just again share screen in terms of the my concluding comments, that I would say basically that to do partnerships is really to do in Metro Manila, we say that you have to have an intersectional analysis of vulnerability, adaptation, and resilience, and you must connect the actors that are connected with this. So if you look at it, I mean, I like Dr. Bacha. You look there I emphasize about about social capital and trust networks as very important, the trust worker in. So I really think that we have to connect the actors who are doing, vulnerability analysis, who are doing hazard assessment, and at the same time doing policy work, and the CSOs doing work on the ground, and the private sector are doing business. So I use what I call the transformational lens in terms of approaching social change. And I really think that we have to have 6 conditions of systems change. Number 1, policies, practices, and resource flows, anchored on relationships, connections, and power dynamics, and mindsets. I think those, in terms of partnership, you have to know where you are there and what is your contribution to the whole thing. So I would like to conclude. This is what I did in Metro Manila. What I did was I looked at all the initiatives that the city was doing, local government was doing, the commercial industrial sector was doing, the community and the households. And as you can see, they're doing all so many wonderful things, but they are fragmented and not connected. And this is my point really, that collaboration, navigation, and respect for each other is very important in doing climate and disaster resilience work. So let me conclude really, Yon, by saying that we need to advance, number one, integrated, inter and transdisciplinary, multi-scalar approaches to risk governance and resilience. We have to establish coherence in the introduction of structural and non-structural measures of adaptation, design resilience frameworks to address dynamic interactions between the sectors, and we have to contextualize gender, generation, and social geographies. So when we say social geography, political geography, economic geography, social and cultural geographies, to reflect the conditions in formal and informal economies. And I always tell the partners on the ground, we have to be problem-focused, solutions-driven, and the need for an interdisciplinary and systems-driven kind of approach. So I would like to conclude that the new conditions we find ourselves in, we have to work together. And I like to quote this African proverb that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, we have to go together. There is no choice really but to collaborate, and we have to trust each other, because that's the only way that we can make this earth more nurturing, more sustainable, and more resilient. Thank you very much. So you can go to our websites and you can download anything, but just acknowledge it.
Thank you, Emma. The African proverb that you quote actually is also well known in Korea, so I'm sure that everyone appreciates that one. Thank you. Without further ado, can I go back to Bapon to wrap up your key recommendations before we come back to Kyongshin? Bapon, can we go first? Thank you.
Thank you so much again for giving the floor. I think I would not actually repeat what two other colleagues actually just says. I'll just like to add here that we need to do a paradigm shift, doing things differently from the traditional approach. So, and also how actually we engage the public and private engagement, and what kind of actually instrument we actually bring into the market to de-risking the private sector or entrepreneur who like to invest their money into this kind of business, because the amount of resource we need, nobody has that kind of resources. So there is no other way we can actually engage them. So in that sense, I'd just like to conclude that complementary is quite important, because we need to have a proper alignment with other funds that are available, how actually we collaboratively work, and also how we actually do the data sharing and data ecosystems. And then also the predictability on clear resource planning processes and as well as time frame, because climate change is happening now. So we need to act right now. And also they speed up, because you can actually design a project next 3 years or 5 years, but that will not solve your problem. It's so dynamic. So we need to actually speed up the resources to transforming the adaptation into the market. That is also quite important. And also how we can actually make this thing simplicity. As a donor point of view, we need to make that how simple we actually make for the country to access financing, so that actually be able to actually take some adaptation practices. With these things, I hand over to you. It's been a pleasure to be with you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. To make it very short, although very important notes. Last but not least, Kyongshin has been waiting, and she hasn't done half of what she prepared, I think. So let's give her another 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, I tried to keep myself very short. And so the other discussants also highlighted the importance of the partnership and the network and the collaboration. And I do hope that our local actors, including the CSOs, local CSOs and NGOs, are part of that partnership, because normally the NGOs we talk about partnership, but that's interpreted in more way like partnership. It's more like someone is not reciprocal. It's normally okay. The big donor have the power, and then they impose something on the locals, and then people say, okay, this is the partnership. So what do you say? So from our experience, from our NGOs CBDRI project, what they have experienced is the alignment with the donor framework imposed on the local CSOs and the local people, because those systems and the jargons are all made from the top down, and then there is no such appreciation from what is bottomed up from the local side. So that is really, if you really want to say, okay, we are going together faster, then there should be a room for these locally led initiatives that is led by the local people, the affected themselves. So there is actually one examples these days in terms of the localization and locally led responses. So the local people, also from the same case examples that what our Adriana had mentioned in the previous sessions, is small grant for the locals so that they can try out, be innovative in their own context. So use the resources for themselves to try out, and then what they need is the mentoring. So when you say capacity building, it can be included a lot of capacity building trainings and etc. But then if you really want to hear the voices from the bottom up, being inclusive, then the system has to be more suitable for the local people to speak out in this global, the big games. So that's what I wanted to really highlight in terms of if we want to say inclusive partnership, then that has to be really genuine and then meaningful. So make the systems and mechanisms favorable also for the local people to try out themselves within their own context. Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. In fact, just a few key words to wrap up from this wonderful 4 panelists. Embeddedness of risk reduction and capacity building at various different levels of stakeholders, not only just the government side, but also partnership and networking, not only between the government and, but I'm saying a different level of government, so from the central to local governments, as well as local communities, CSOs, and even, I think Bapon has mentioned also private sector increasingly playing a role in this area. And all these things, hope that we are going to make vulnerabilities into a transformative energies, I guess, the transformation. That's what we look for. And complementarily and locally led initiatives, that's great to finish by. Actually, until very last evening, we were talking, even internally, we were talking about the whole purposes of or objectives of having this session in this World Knowledge Forum as a part of the World Knowledge Forum, because it's a catchphrase of this year's World Knowledge Forum is Technic Big Bang. And it is many sessions, I understand, are addressing AI and technology and prosperity, all this. But I think, but of course, the technology is important, and AI may change our lives, hopefully for the good use. And this might be very important and meaningful means for climate mitigation, for example. But then let's not forget about the most vulnerable people. Not only, actually, we all know that climate change does not really affect the vulnerable people or in poor countries, but it affects now increasingly everyone. We hear every disaster coming. We don't know what to expect tomorrow because we hear a lot one by one every day. And especially though, most vulnerable people, I just want to highlight and draw your attention that the today's everyday challenges in the developing context in particular are how to adapt to this changing climate. And so this is why we wanted to make this session being part of this global Knowledge Forum, and I hope that it has helped you to think about again. And I think it's about the time, but if I'd like to still collect, if anyone with a burning question, that if you're not going to sleep tight tonight, if you don't raise a question to any of these panels, it's very hard to have all this wonderful panel at once in a place. So please do not lose your opportunity to talk, speak up if you want to. Yes, we have one. Gino, please, do we have a microphone?
Yeah, I can speak loudly. Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you for the great presentation. I'm Gino Chung from University of Oxford, and then I really enjoyed the 4 panels speeches. My question is actually quite towards to Sanjaya, but also other panels too, because he mentioned that trust between different actors and stakeholders is really critical in developing and improving the actually partnerships of different stakeholders. And from my experience both in academia and practice, I believe it is quite about sharing information. And then the sharing information can be quite problematic sometimes, because what types of information and what kind of information can be delivered in a which way or how. So in terms of the sharing information, if you have any tips or key lessons that you had from your experience, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, excellent question. One more, maybe the last one. Count very fast. 3, 2, 1. Yes, go. All right. Sanjaya, are you still there, or any panelist would you like to answer?
I'm here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you?
No,
please?
thank you. That's a great question, and it's a big challenge actually. Wherever we have worked, we work a lot with governments, both national and local. One of the key areas of data sharing where there's a big challenge is that in a lot of local governments, for example, there are key service providers who handle critical infrastructure who are in the private sector, or they are national government, and the local government is trying to look at their resilience strategy, and the national government unit or a private sector unit, it could be a power plant, it could be telecom, they are managing, they are holding the data for that part of the critical infrastructure. So sharing the data is important, of course, but is a challenge. The best way to deal with it, we have seen, is open communication, explaining the reasons why the data needs to be taken and how it will be used. And I'll give you another example. We had one example in Sri Lanka where the National Disaster Management Agency wanted data from different ministries, all within the same government, but they all work in silos. And again, there is all this hesitation to share data and trust issues. So what they did was they asked the National Statistics Office to second one officer to the National Disaster Management Agency. So this person came over for 1 year, and they worked in so they are the statistics office which collects data from different ministries, and they worked in the National Disaster Management Agency for a year, and then he understood, he or she, they understood why this data is required, how it will be used, and how it is important for the objectives of the government. And then this person became an advocate when he or she went back to the National Statistics Office, became an advocate to make sure that the data was shared. So again, it's about building trust through open communication, I think.
Right. Thank you, Sanjaya. Yeah, it's been a struggle to get the right information at the right time. But I think we have to close the session. Thank you for your attention so far and being with us. And let's thank the panelists, Sanjaya from Yuan Dural, Emma Perillo from attending from like Philippines, and Kyung-Shin Lee here from KCOC, and Bapong Farudin from GCF. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Let's applause.
Thank you.